Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming, guys. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching me on YouTube or on Rumble. I had the opportunity to invite a guest or two to discuss this hot topic today, which is the U.S. House of Representatives passed a $95 billion package in aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. But I have personally so much to say that I wanted to make this live streaming by myself, because if I host someone and I want to say what I want to say, then I will not let the guest to speak. However, if you're new, guys, subscribe to this YouTube channel, because there are going to be interesting guests coming to this channel. Last week was amazing, and this week there are going to be also other guests. And at the end of this live streaming, I'm going to announce one of the guests who is going to be our guest tomorrow. Is a special guest on Syriana Analysis. So imagine if there is a country A or B or C or X, call it whatever you want, has passed a bill to send $95 billion of military package aid, they call it an aid, to three other foreign countries. And these other three foreign countries have countries beside them or in the surrounding that you want to fight, right? So you're not going to fight face to face with these countries. You're not going to wage a war against your rivals, and you're not going to clash with Russia, China, and the major powers, for example, in Iran. So what you do basically, you support other players and other state and non-state actors in the surrounding, in the periphery of these countries, in order to encourage that these players fight and do the bidding for you, right? So what happened basically this week, which is amazing if you're an American and you would read this news or hear it on your mainstream media outlets. I don't know how probably they are justifying it. $95 billion of foreign aid package to three foreign countries. I mean, one of which is sending its men to meat grinder, and the second one is accused of committing genocide in Gaza, and the third one probably wants to be another pawn for the United States this time, just like Armenia, right? So the United States House of Representatives has passed a $95 billion legislative package providing security assistance to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The long-awaited bill, which passed on Saturday, saw broad bipartisan support and could be signed into law as early as next week after it passes through the Senate and lands on President Joe Biden's desk for his signature. So this is one of the proofs that you don't have a bipartisan system. You don't have an opposition in the United States. When it comes to the major headlines, when it comes to the major geopolitical conflicts, both parties, Republicans or Democrats, they agree on one thing. Probably some of the representatives vote against, but the majority of the representatives from both sides, they will always vote for any sort of bill and a package of aid that could potentially help the military industrial complex and could potentially help the AIPAC and the Israeli lobby in the United States. Because the House of Representatives, the Senate, or the Congress, they can be bought actually by foreign interest entities, for example, the AIPAC. They could be bought by foreign powers because they are corrupted. And this is something that I discussed with Matthew Ho on this channel. And I'm going to come back and play to you these segments when we spoke about how AIPAC is actually buying American representatives and officials for a very, very cheap price. And to be honest with you, I was surprised. I thought that they would sell themselves for millions of dollars, but apparently few tens of thousands of dollars can buy for you a U.S. House of Representatives and in the Senate. So how much of this aid is going to Israel? This foreign aid is going package is going to Israel around $26 billion, including $9 billion for humanitarian needs. So this is the tricky part, right? They say that they're going to send $26 billion to Israel, $9 billion of it is humanitarian needs, but the humanitarian needs mostly covers what is called the Palestinian refugees. And why do they allocate $9 billion to the Palestinian refugees? Because in my opinion, they're going to facilitate the what they call the voluntary migration of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. So, in my opinion, this $9 billion that they allocated to the Palestinian refugees in Gaza, the majority of it, or mainly, this is going to be to encourage the voluntary migration of the Palestinians, which means ethnic cleansing from the Gaza Strip to Europe, or first to Egypt and then to European countries. So, of this 26 billion, we have 5.2 billion is going to replenish and expand Israel's missile and rocket defense systems. 3.5 billion are going to buy advanced weapon systems, and 1 billion to enhance weapons production in Israel. 4.4 billion for other supplies and services to Israel, and 9.2 billion for humanitarian purposes. However, none of this money is going to the UNRWA based on the allegations of Israel, which is unproven, by the way, that some of the UNRWA employees participated in the October 7 events. Now, of course, who was thankful for this? Benjamin Netanyahu. He posted a tweet, said that he welcomed the billions of dollars in U.S. assistance. And he says this demonstrates strong bipartisan support for Israel and defends Western civilization. The Palestinian presidency condemned the bill as an aggression against the Palestinian people and dangerous escalation. And the spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority said the money would translate into thousands of Palestinian casualties in the Gaza Strip. And this is going to be used against the Palestinians, whether in Gaza or in the West Bank, which is something I agree. But the Palestinian Authority maybe should stop coordinating with the Israeli security, and maybe should also reconsider its relations with the United States, because they are actually paid by the United States. Now, how much of this money is going to Ukraine? So of the $60 billion going to Ukraine, we have 23 billion to this is the interesting part, right? So some of this money stays in the United States, and some of this money is recycled in the United States to fund the military-industrial complex, right? And this is the interesting part of this bill, that they want to send this money to Ukraine, but basically some of it is staying in the United States. Why? To replenish U.S. weapons stocks and facilities, because mostly the United States sent its weapons to Ukraine, so they have to dedicate $23 billion to replenish U.S. weapons stocks and facilities. $14 billion for the Ukrainian Security Assistance Initiative, a U.S. Department of State-led funding program that helps train Ukraine's military and provides equipment and advisory initiatives. So $14 billion is going to Ukraine. And then we have $11 billion will fund the current U.S. military operations in the region, which means in Eastern Europe, and enhance the capabilities of the Ukrainian military and boost intelligence collaboration between Kiev and Washington. And finally, $8 billion in non-military assistance, including helping Ukraine's government pay the salary. So basically, the United States and the American taxpayer money is going to pay for the salaries of the US government. And of course, Zelensky was very happy, and he made an amateur video, posted it on X, taking like a selfie video of himself from a very noisy place, and he thanked the United States for sending all these billions to Ukraine. And I wonder what would be the opinion of the American people for sending all this money to abroad, whereas the foreign leaders are praising the United States. So Zelensky expressed his gratitude, saying U.S. lawmakers moved to keep history on the right track. He said the vital U.S. aid bill passed today by the House will keep the war from expanding, save thousands and thousands of lives, and help both of our nations to become stronger. And this is completely and utter BS, because this money is going to only help Ukraine to continue its fight for another year or two, and then they will need another package. And during this time, tens of thousands of more Ukrainians will perish because there is not going to be any decisive victory for Ukraine against the Russians. If this package is going to strike a decisive victory against Russia, then I would argue that yes, they could save lives. But this package doesn't include any sort of game-changing weapons or any plan to strike a victory against Russia. Therefore, this money is only going to prolong the war and cost more Ukrainian lives and more Russian lives, right? So this money is only going to prolong the status quo in Ukraine, whereas the Russian side will grab some more territories in Ukraine during this time. It's just going to prevent the obvious for another year or two, the complete collapse of the front lines of the Ukrainian armed forces against Russia. Unfortunately, this is the truth. And in a year or two, then the Ukrainians will discuss once again their surrender deal with Russia. That's the end game, unfortunately speaking. So how much of this money is going to Asia Pacific, to Taiwan? $8.1 billion are going to Taiwan. Taiwanese authorities have previously highlighted delays in U.S. weapon deliveries such as Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, and Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense thanked the U.S. for its rock-solid support for Taiwan after the bill passed. Now, separately, the package includes proposals that allow the U.S. to seize frozen Russian central bank assets to rebuild Ukraine and impose sanctions on Iran, Russia, and China, as well as provisions that the China-based owner of the popular video app TikTok sell its stake within a year or face a U.S. ban. So this is the summary of what happened in the U.S. House of Representatives. Now the bill is going to go to the Senate, and the Democrats have the majority there. Slight majority, let's say, and it will pass very quickly. And Joe Biden, in a week or two, maximum 3 weeks, he will put his signature, and they will send billions of dollars abroad. Now, some of you may ask, actually, one of the commentators, American commentators, and he says, I really don't understand why it's the U.S. national interest to support Ukraine. Even if Putin is bad, he says, who cares? Why do we care if some faraway border changes? And to be honest with you, on the surface, he is correct, but there are deep reasons why the United States is supporting Ukraine. It's all based on geopolitics, because Ukraine is the final piece of a geopolitical bridge consisting of France, Germany, Poland, and then Ukraine, which provides the United States a strategic opportunity to project its hegemony inside Russia, leading to destabilization and partitioning of the Russian Federation. And in this regard, I made a short video, 3.5 minutes, explaining this exact case, why the United States supporting Ukraine, why the United States supporting Israel, and why the United States supporting Taiwan. So let's take a look together. I think this video that I wanted to show you is recorded on the mute, so I will just re-upload it because it's very quick and I can do it very quickly. It seems that some of the softwares that I use are making some troubles, but the video is here. It's going to be great again. So, okay, this is it. I can play this from my software. Let's take a look together from here. Or I want to show you before that what Cenk said in this regard. Or let's see what Andrei Fursov. He's the one of the leading intellectuals of Russia from Moscow State University on Western plans regarding Russia, because this is the exact point that I made today, and one of the commentators actually posted this video on my X account, trying to endorse what I said in this case, and this is how the Russians also see there. Let's take a look together what the Russian leading intellectual from the State University of Russia says in this regard.
И на всех уровнях присутствуют вот эти 4 кластера. Теперь, если посмотреть по, сказать, планам, у американцев план очень простой. Ослабление России до такой степени, чтобы здесь был проамериканский режим, и использовать его для борьбы с Китаем. В плане британцев поражение России, полное ее разрушение. Они рассчитывают, что в этом случае Соединенные Штаты и Китай сцепятся в борьбе за российское наследство. И
Британия выигрыш.
А Британия, она воссоздаст свою империю. Американцы вырубили Европу. Европа больше не является частью центра ядра капиталистической системы. Она опускается в полупериферию. Скажем, то, что Макрон истерит, это понятно. Ему нужно, он хочет себя выставить, так сказать, лидером, таким сильным лидером, поэтому есть фотошоп, где он там мышцы вот эти накачал. Причем я думаю, что на них давит, у них комплекс перед Путиным. Путин в хорошей физической форме, да. И Макрон тоже решил показать, что он, сказать, вот такой же. Нет, Макрон решает свои проблемы с выборами, и ему хочется быть военным лидером Европы. Ради бога, я посмотрю, как будут люди воевать вот в этих гендерных армиях там и т.д. и т.п. Это, так сказать, те еще вояки. Процесс может выйти из-под контроля по, сказать, по дурику просто. Поэтому здесь нужно быть очень внимательным. Самое главное, вот нужно, чтобы противник понимал, что ответный удар будет страшный.
So, you see that one of the complexities of the Western leaders vis-a-vis Putin is personal, unfortunately. And if you look at the plans, Americans have a very simple one vis-a-vis Russia, is to weaken Russia, and to the extent that there is a pro-American government in Russia, and to use it against China. And this is something that I didn't think of. And when I watched this video, I was like, yeah, I mean, one of the goals is in Ukraine is to complete this bridge, which is, I mentioned, France, Germany, Poland, and Ukraine. And through this bridge, you can project your hegemony inside Russia to destabilize it and also to partition it. And this was one of the reasons why the Americans supported the jihadists in Russia during the first Chechen War and the second Chechen War, and also in Afghanistan, right? This was the reason. However, probably they would not need to partition Russia if they have a weak or pro-American government there, which was they were hoping that Navalny would come to power. And if Navalny comes to power and he is too pro-American, he could become an anti-Chinese, he could transfer Russia into an anti-Chinese state and then bring these two big powers to fight against each other, just like the Americans did between the Iraq and the Iran in the Middle East in the 80s. They don't have to go and fight each one of them. And they let these two strong powers fight each other to weaken each other. And then they were able to occupy Iraq easily. But the Iranians survived this attempt, right? So this could be one of the strategies of the United States, that to weaken Russia, bring a pro-American government, and then turn Russia against China and let them fight each other. Why would the Americans intervene in this case? That would be a grand strategy by the Americans. Now the video is ready that I'm going to show you. And this is why the United States supports Ukraine, and why the United States supports Taiwan, and why the United States supports Israel. And I address each and every country with very simple, reasons, the reasons that I believe. I'm not going into so much in-depth of analysis, but the headlines, why the Americans support these three countries. Let's take a look. America loves to paint a picture of itself in glorious terms. It sees itself as the shining city on a hill, the indispensable nation, and the land of the free. Each of these titles holds some truth. However, there is another phrase that is not always so flattering, yet still applies to the US, global empire. The United States established NATO to offer a security blanket for its allies and achieved a level of global dominance that no previous empire had ever reached. Nevertheless, in the last 2 decades, it has experienced a decline, while developing countries now boast the world's fastest growing economies. From this perspective, it appears that the United States is following the path of all empires, destined to decline and eventually crumble. What accelerates the decline of the US empire is the never-ending money printing to finance endless wars. While some of these wars, like Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, were directly fought by the US Army, others were fought through proxies unknown to the American people. they remained oblivious to the fact that they were financing these wars. All the while, inflation eroded the value of the dollar and consequently the quality of their lives. This introduction was important before addressing the recent news coming from the US. The House of Representatives has passed a $95 billion legislative package providing security assistance to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. $95 billion. Now, why Ukraine? Why Israel? And why Taiwan? Ukraine is the final piece of a geopolitical bridge consisting of France, Germany, Poland, and Ukraine, which provides the United States with a strategic opportunity to project its hegemony inside Russia, leading to destabilization and partitioning of the Federation. Israel is the largest aircraft carrier of the US in the Middle East and is instrumental in Washington's divide and conquer strategy in the region. Israel's army is, by the way, accused of committing acts of genocide in the Gaza Strip, and this military aid will only worsen the humanitarian conditions in Palestine and embolden the reckless government in Tel Aviv and its adventures against Iran. Finally, Taiwan, in its strategic position, is positioned as a cutting-edge satellite entity that can effectively restrict China's access to vital global trade routes. This dangerous maneuver aims to transform Taiwan into a valuable asset, a potential pawn in countering its greatest rival, China, which poses a significant challenge to the United States. Foreign leaders have expressed their gratitude towards US officials for generously providing financial support to desperately maintain the empire's dominance. But it was interesting to note that not a single American has shown appreciation towards their elected representatives. Have you ever wondered why that is? Is it maybe because their elected representatives carry Ukraine flags as they vote to send more of their hard-earned money to corrupt foreign regimes while ignoring their citizens and the borders of their country? Interesting, right? All these countries are receiving aid from the United States because they serve a purpose. In the Middle East, Israel is the largest aircraft carrier of the United States and instrumental in the divide and conquer strategy in the region. In Ukraine, it's used as a pawn against Russia to divide Europe into and slice it into half. And one half, Russia cannot reach the second half, and also block the economic integration between Russia and Germany. And Taiwan is used as a pawn in order to block Chinese access to the international trade routes, right? Especially the maritime trade routes. Those are the reasons basically why the United States is supporting these three countries. Now, Cenk Uygur, which I disagree with him completely on so many other cases, but in this case, he's making valid points. He says he made few tweets in this regard. And why I'm showing you these tweets, because I will explain why the United States House of Representatives and other officials are accepting to send all these billions to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. So he says, so after all of Israel's atrocities, over 25,000 women and children slaughtered and a million starving people, Congress overwhelmingly approved 26 billion to Israel, 366 to 58, including great majority of Democrats. That's a giant green light for genocide. They don't care at all. And he also says, not a single mainstream media article I've seen analyzing why the 26 billion to Israel passed the House has mentioned that the top donor to Joe Biden, Mike Johnson, and Hakeem Jeffries is AIPAC. So-called journalists are all pretending politicians do not care about their donors. This information will never touch the mainstream media, my friend. And finally, it says AIPAC is going to spend 100 million in this election cycle. What did it buy them? 28 million, 26 million, billion to Israel from American taxpayers. Best investment ever. Corruption works. Does it look like we live in a democracy? Yeah, those are great points. And this is something that I asked Matthew Ho when he was on my show last Friday. And I personally thought that, probably these representatives are receiving millions, but apparently they're only receiving fraction of a money. Take a look.
But we have a real structural problem here that, even if you did have 90% of the American people against Israel, you would still have massive support for Israel in the American government.
There is this Twitter X account called AIPAC Tracker. And what they do basically,
yes.
They find the pro-Israel statements made by the senators and the congressmen and congresswomen, and they just quote the tweet and post of how much money that this representative has received. And to be honest with you, sometimes I get surprised that some of them only received 60,000, 70,000 or 100,000 from AIPAC, and they are so loyal to Israel. It's like, I thought like they're receiving millions, it's like, is it worth it for 60,000?
That's the really embarrassing thing about our corruption in the U.S. with our public officials, is it's often very cheap. It's often very cheap. It is. It's kind of embarrassing, right? That our politicians get bought for so little. But, chief among those of lifetime recipients, Joe Biden by far is the biggest lifetime recipients of Israeli lobby money. So even if the Holy Mother, even if the Virgin Mary were to appear to him, I don't even think that would shake his decisions. And he also, too, we tend to focus a lot on the money, on the pressure that lobbies and interest groups can bear, and that certainly is true. But it's also the case that these people are committed Zionists. They really do believe what they're saying. Joe Biden says there's no bigger Zionist in Washington, D.C. than him, and we all have to believe that.
Guys, do you really think that, for example, Joe Biden, he believes that he is a Zionist, or because his interests and financial interests and political interests intertwined with the Zionists and with the Israeli lobby? I mean, if you are going to be a president of the United States and you have a long journey in the corridors of the U.S., first in the Senate, in the Congress, and becoming vice president, I mean, you know how to play their rules for the game, right? And if you learn and excel these rules, you know that one of the main and major aspects for you to become, or factors to become a president or to ascend in the positions of power in the United States, is to be pro-Israel. So in my opinion, they don't have to be really believing in the Zionist cause, but rather just out of opportunistic reasons. Of course, I'm not denying that there are arch Zionists in the United States and they believe that it's the right thing to do. But also when there is money, in the political money and the lobby money, that can facilitate your journey to become and reach to higher positions of power and make profits and also strike financial deals even outside of the United States, then of course you would probably believe in Zionism even if you're not a Zionist, right? That's one of the aspects, in my opinion, one of the factors that we have to keep in mind. The second thing is, I saw one of the comments of one of you at the beginning of this live streaming that this is disgusting, and but this is the U.S. government is doing it in the name of the American people, but the American people do not agree, and they don't. Yeah, I agree with you. Nowadays, the vast majority of the Americans do not agree with Joe Biden's foreign policy approach in Gaza, and they don't agree with what the Israeli army is doing in the Gaza Strip, and they see that this is horrendous. And every day, every passing day, there is going to be more resistance in the United States against the U.S. administration. And what's happening in Columbia University and elsewhere, this is going to be normalized everywhere. The people are the majority, and the people have power. The people can make change. Usually, the people do not know that they have power. They don't know that they have this much of strength vis-a-vis the government, right? Because the government always sells them the illusion that as much as you protest, as much as you do, there's not going to be any change, and there's not going to be any even slight change in my foreign policy approach. They don't say it directly, but you can, we say in Arabic, you can bark as much as you want, but nothing is going to be, nothing is going to change, right? And this is why sometimes in democracies, change doesn't really happen, because the people have the right to protest and demonstrate, but change doesn't come. But when the pressure is too high, for example, in the Columbia University now, they're throwing everything they have. This is anti-Semitism, or Jewish students cannot go to school. Like I've seen videos after videos of Jewish demonstrators and the Jewish demonstrations in this Columbia University with the pro-Palestine community wearing their kippas, and nothing is happening to them. But weaponizing anti-Semitism has become the only weapon that they have to discredit these people, right? They don't have anything else left in their pockets. So, in my opinion, people like Norman Finkelstein and other Jewish people who are participating in giving speech and mobilizing the people in the United States, those are the people who are going to make change. But there are elections coming in the United States. And I was watching today a video for Harley Schlanger. He's from the Schiller Institute for Research, and it's a political institute. And he was actually addressing the American people, and he was saying something to the American people. What could they do in the next elections to make the change, right? Because, look, these representatives who voted for these bills, they are elected by the American people. So next time they come and they ask you for your vote, maybe you can say something to them. This is what Harley Schlanger said in this regard. Let's take a look.
So what I would say is that when your congressman comes to you to plead for your vote in 2024, you have to have the courage to say that the $100 billion for the corporate billionaires and their war machine and nothing for us, and you're coming to us asking for our vote when you've done nothing for us. And that's the message that has to go out to the Congress. Now, this is occurring at the same time where the rest of the world is standing up against Wall Street and the City of London, where we see sovereign nations refuse to knuckle under to the insane demands for loot coming from these corporate cartels. So the question then comes back to the American people. Where will we stand? Will we stand up for our children's future? Or will we fold the way Speaker Johnson did when he capitulated to the demands of the war machine for more, 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 more? $60 billion for the war machine when it comes to Ukraine, and zero for you in the United States. That's the tally from the vote last Saturday. And it's recognizing that which makes it incumbent upon all of us to make sure we use the next months to ensure that we have a Congress that's not as complicit in genocide and looting as the one that we have right now in Washington.
This is good points made by Harley Schlanger. And our friend says, God told U.S. Congress to fund Ukraine, and he's being sarcastic, of course. And while I saw this comment, I mean, you would think that he's just being sarcastic, but he's also have there's truth even in his sarcasm, because the speaker Johnson, he said, for those of us who are believers, it's a biblical admonition to stand with Israel. And this was him on TV saying these words, right? And this is so crazy coming from a country that claims to be secular.
Israel is a critical ally of ours, and I think most people understand the necessity of this funding. They're fighting for their very existence. They're the only stable democracy in the Middle East. I mean, of course, for those of us who are believers, it's a biblical admonition to stand with Israel. We will, and they will prevail as long as they're with them. And this is an important, very important symbolic gesture and a very important replenishment of their stockpiles, for example, of the Iron Dome. The reason they shot down all those drones and missiles in the last attack by Iran is because we assisted with that. I think the American people understand the importance of that.
You know what's crazy about such statements and admissions is that they claim that other countries are backward and they are not civilized enough and not developed enough because they are religious countries like Iran. And they bash other people for not accepting their norms and their values and everything. But when it comes to Israel, everything is about the biblical, it's about the religion, it's about, this is the crazy part. Like, take out religion from the discussion in the United States about Israel, nothing's left for them to justify the support for Israel, right? Just take out religion, and nothing is left for them to justify why they are supporting Israel unconditionally to carry out this heinous act of crimes against the Palestinian people. Nothing left for them. That's the only argument for them. And when they speak about this God and religion and the promised land. And I mean, I don't really understand why do they think that their interpretation and their religion or their God or whatever they believe in is the correct one. I mean, if you are born and raised in West Asia and you were born in some religion A, and the religion B comes from far away from Pennsylvania and living in Manhattan and comes and tells you, my religion says that this territory is mine, so you better believe or we're going to kill you. And then the bigger country comes and they give the weapons to the smaller one to carry out these heinous crimes against you, because some God that they believe in, which you don't, said that this territory is theirs. It's very ridiculous, right? You just think about it. You imagine I come to you in the United States and I say, my religion says that in Texas or in, I don't know, somewhere in California, probably it's easier because people are there are more, they don't have as much guns as in Texas. Yeah, this territory, some of it is mine, and we will divide California this year because my religion said that in this book that my God, this territory is promised to me. So you better believe it, or I have China and Russia in my back, and then Russia and China will send $26 billion of military aid to me, and then I will carry out some very justifiable self-defense military operation against you, and then you will be considered a terrorist, right? Voila, it's done. You will be kicked out because my God says so. Rachel Belvins, she's a brilliant journalist, and she posted a very good video about this case. Some of it is sarcastic, some of it is fun, some of it is informative. And I summarized this video, just the main parts, for you to know that the major part about this Ukraine aid, right, the part that is allocated to Ukraine, is going to be recycled and stay in the United States in order to support the military-industrial complex. And I'm going to link her video to a recent video that I made, how the US empire is declining and why the American people have not benefited from the American empire or living in an empire. First, let's take a look what Rachel said, and then we're going to come back and comment.
And just when you think that the politicians in Washington can't get any more shameless, they always seem to find a way. This weekend's version consisted of members of the House waving tiny Ukrainian flags as they passed around $95 billion in foreign aid, including around $60 billion in Ukraine-related assistance. Now, we're going to get into what all is included in that, but it's important to note that what is not included in that is a plan for Ukraine to win this current war. In fact, that $60 billion is not even going to make a dent in the current situation. It's going to do virtually nothing for Ukraine in the grand scheme of things. It's not going to win them back any territory. It's just going to prolong the suffering as the U.S. continues to prop up the regime in Kiev. And yet you have members of Congress cheering for that, acting as if they just passed the "we found a way for Ukraine to win this war" plan. No, you found a way to kill more Ukrainian soldiers. You found a way to keep Zelensky in office for a little longer, sure, but you really didn't actually accomplish anything in the grand scheme of things. And you continue to take no accountability for the fact that you have passed now hundreds of billions of dollars for Ukraine with no accountability and no transparency. And they're just keeping on with business as usual. Now, that's not the only thing that Congress did this weekend. They also passed around $26 billion in Israel-related aid. And we're also going to get into what that money is actually for. And of course, the message that the Biden administration is sending to Netanyahu right now. Yes, this is the same Joe Biden that will get on the phone with Netanyahu and tell him, hey, you need to stop killing so many Palestinians. You need to let more aid in for the civilians in Gaza. And what is the message that Biden is actually sending? Well, we're seeing it here as Congress approves even more aid for Israel. But I think what's notable here, as you see these members of Congress who, again, are waving tiny Ukrainian flags, yet they're doing nothing to actually help the people of Ukraine. You want to help the people of Ukraine? Stop this war. Stop providing support to continue propping up Zelensky's regime and acting as though Ukraine is ever going to be a victory for the West and for NATO, because right now it appears that it's not. Unless Russia falls apart tomorrow and their industrial society completely falls apart, it is a reminder that NATO cannot keep up with Russia when it comes to industrial capacity. They cannot keep up with Russia when it comes to manpower, as you have the Russian military expanding by thousands of volunteers regularly, and you have Ukraine struggling to keep up, increasing their age for conscription, saying that they may even be targeting people with disabilities. There's also talk of Ukraine conscripting women. That's how bad it is getting there. But the moral of the story here is that the US is acting like they are doing something for Ukraine, like they're signing off on some wonder weapon that's going to change the tide of the war. It's not. They really haven't accomplished anything. And I know that I keep saying that, but I just want to continue hitting the point home of the fact that all of these members of Congress are completely delusional, and they're actually not cheering because they think that they are sending help to the Ukrainians. No, they're cheering because they're continuing to help the military-industrial complex. Replenishing weapons stockpiles here in the U.S., yeah, that's basically a big fat check for Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all of those defense contractors that are going to have plenty of money to keep them busy for the next few years to come.
I mean, if I were an American, I wouldn't be happy about this, to be honest with you. I mean, all my hard work, taxpayer money, I mean, at the moment, my taxpayer money is also going to Ukraine, and I'm not happy about that at all. And if you live in a democracy, and you should be asked if you want your hard working taxpayer money that I'm working every day would go to a foreign country. Why would I want to my money to go to Israel, or to Ukraine, or to Taiwan? I don't want that. I want for this money to bring me clean neighborhoods here. And every day the neighborhoods are getting, sorry to say, shittier. I want for the train stations to be clean, which is getting dirtier every day. I want for to find a solution for the homeless people. Like, the number of homeless people is crazy now in Berlin, right? Alcoholics everywhere, drugs in the streets, right? And the drug sellers are also everywhere in the street. But the civil police is coming after the dog owners who are walking their dogs without the line, whereas the drugs sellers are free walking in the street and selling their drugs. It's so crazy how the priorities are upside down. And your money will finance the death of people, the death of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and the death of Ukrainian and Russian people in Ukraine, and potential death of Chinese and Taiwanese, right? It's crazy that we cannot really say what is really happening here. I mean, you are allowed to say these things here, but most of the talking heads, they don't want to touch on these issues. And these representatives who voted and they agreed to send these weapons, they're not delusional, like Rachel said. I agree with her everything, but they're not delusional. They know what they're doing. They're just helping the military-industrial complex, because if they don't do that, they will not be re-elected. And if they go against AIPAC, they're not going to be re-elected, because it's not only about the money that you receive, but also the money your opponent could receive to kick you out of the race, of the electoral race. It's about the media and the press smearing you day and night if you don't get along with Israel and the headlines of the military-industrial complex. They're going to destroy you if you don't consent and if you rebel, you're done. And this is one of the points that I raised the other day. The United States had the opportunity as an empire, at least after the fall of the Soviet Union as a superpower, to bring welfare and good living conditions to the Americans. I mean, compared to other countries, and of course, Americans have better livelihoods, but the United States is the biggest economy in the world, or was the biggest economy in the world. And for a long time, for at least 3 decades, the United States has stayed as a superpower that was in charge of the global affairs. And accordingly, the United States elites, they were able to provide a much better livelihood for their people, which they didn't do. And if you compare the income of the people in the 90s compared to now, and with the inflation and the decrease of the value of the dollar, the American people are not in a better shape today compared to 20 years ago. And this is a missed opportunity, in my opinion, for the United States. And this is something that I discussed in a video, which I said that unfortunately for the Americans, that when their country has become an empire, their elites, unfortunately, have invested in recycling the money and the money printing to come back to their pockets instead of creating a better livelihood for the people. Take a look. If we go back a little bit in history, and we see all empires have expanded and they have committed the same mistakes over and over again. And the problem with the Americans is that since the fall of the Soviet Union, they couldn't preserve their peak of dominance for quite a long time. There were some empires who were able, when they reached to the peak of power, they were able to stay there for 100 years or more. But the Americans, what they did, basically, the elites in the United States, they overstretched around the world. They have 800 military bases. The expenditure is very high. But when you are an empire and you expand, you want to harvest the fruits of this, right? While you're expanding at the end of the day, whether directly or indirectly, to harvest the benefits. But when you harvest the benefits for the interests of your own people, so your people are living in welfare and your people are getting the benefits of living in an empire, then of course the people would support the government. But in the case of the United States, it's very divided society nowadays, and the people can see through that all this expenditure on the military is coming back, recycled to the pockets of these few people who are in power in the United States. And also in the United States, there was this attempt to spread wokeism, right? Social justice. We have to bring justice, historical justice, black and white lines, dividing the people on different lines. But this was more a divide and conquer strategy from the United States elites against its own people. But this has backfired now during the Palestine conflict, that most of the woke people that they wanted to control them, now they see that this is also about social justice. This is also about a historical justice for the Palestinian people. And it just exploded to their faces. Now they have a younger generation which hasn't lived the Iraq war or the Afghanistan war. They don't have the memory like we do, but they still can see through what's happening in the world. And that's why they want to ban TikTok. They want to now suppress the social media platforms. So I would argue that politically speaking, the United States, yes, the power is shrinking, but also the support of the people for the activities of the government is also shrinking. And this is very dangerous for them. Now that Tucker Carlson, for example, he hosted this Christian pastor from Bethlehem, this is like you are breaking the bond in the United States, because one of the main pillars of the American people's support to Israel, it stands on this Christian evangelical Zionist support to Israel. And when you have increasing number of people, call them whatever you want, Tucker Carlson or other big personalities in the United States, they're actually fastening, in my opinion, this process of the United States not stay as a dominant power around the world. Now, the Russians and the Chinese, in my opinion, because the Iranians, they have discussed this extensively before the strikes with the Chinese and with the Russians. And the Russians came in defense of the Iranians in the UN Security Council. And the special envoy said what happened on the night of April 14 didn't happen in a vacuum. Iran's steps were a response to the shameful inaction of the UN Security Council and a response to Israel's blatant attack on Damascus. By no means the first. Syria is constantly being bombed by Israel. China comes and says that the current tensions in the Middle East are a consequence of the Gaza war. So all these mistakes, accumulated mistakes by the United States in the past, and this is what Brzezinski warned. Don't bring China, Iran, and Russia together. This is a nightmare for the United States. And all these miscalculations actually have led that all these three countries are coming closer and closer and closer together now. If these countries strike strategic partnership and alliances, those are the three pillars of Eurasia. This will be the end of the American supremacy over the world. So, guys, do you think that the United States has missed a golden opportunity? Do you think that the empire is shrinking? Do you think that the powers are shrinking? And do you think this is a desperate attempt by the elites in the United States to sustain and to keep the United States a superpower around the world? Do you think they are able to slow down the crumbling process? Do you think that the United States is crumbling at all? Probably some people do not agree with that notion, right? Some people say that the United States will always find a way to come back stronger and stronger. And I truly believe that the United States can come back stronger. But I also think that the United States needs to go back into its isolationist mode for a while and reprocess what they have done in the past few decades and try to come back with a better model for the world, and especially when it comes to their projection of power around the world, and a different economic system that is based on cooperation with different powers, especially with the rivals, instead of being obsessed with blocking other countries' development, sanctioning them so that they can't develop, and imposing embargo on other countries because the model you don't like, the political model or the economic model, for example, in Syria or in Cuba or in Venezuela. I mean, there are so many opportunities in front of the United States to go back, to recalculate what they have done, reconsider what they have done, and to come back as a superpower again, but to share the responsibilities with the rest of the world. But as long as these elites are in power and this mentality governs the policy in the United States, and the lobbies, the Zionist lobby, Israel, and the military-industrial complex, and the bankers, etc., it's not going to change, unfortunately, unless the people really bring the change and impose the change in the United States. And this is something on the shoulders of the American people. But the vast majority of the American people do not know what's happening around the world, right? They probably know what's happening in their federal state or probably in their neighborhood. But the vast majority of the Americans are unaware of what's happening around the world, and unaware that the United States, unfortunately, policy is based on a divide and conquer, to rule and stay dominant, and the United States always turns the conflicts into dangerous situations and prolong the conflicts because it's profitable for them. And this was something that is, interestingly, while I was preparing for this live streaming, there is a new interview for President Bashar al-Assad of Syria, and he spoke about this particular case, and in a longer interview, I just cut this segment, it's 50 seconds, where he speaks exactly about this case. Let's take a look.
Западная политика, в частности американская, строится на принципе «разделяй и властвуй». Это их способ контроля, своего рода шантаж. Подобное поведение аморально, но такова реальность. Америка превращает любой конфликт в опасную хроническую болезнь, вроде сахарного диабета или раковой опухоли. Расплачиваются за конфликт воюющие стороны. И когда мы говорим «Америка», мы подразумеваем весь Запад, поскольку он полностью контролируется США. С любого конфликта Америка наживается, а потом отходит в сторону и наблюдает за разрастающимся хаосом, выжидая момент, когда можно будет нанести решающий удар. Им выгоден любой конфликт.
So, according to Assad, the Western policy, especially American, is based on the principle of divide and rule. America turns any conflict into a dangerous chronic disease. With any conflict, America benefits and then steps aside and watches the growing chaos, waiting for the right moment to strike the decisive blow. For America, every conflict is profitable. I agree with him that for America, every conflict is profitable. But do you think that the Americans are waiting for the right moment to strike a decisive blow against Russia, for example, in Ukraine? Because in my opinion, the American wagon for striking a blow against Russia has passed. And against China is the same. They have missed that opportunity. Maybe they had it a decade or two ago, But now with the alliances between Russia, China, and Iran, and also under the umbrella of the BRICS and under the umbrella of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and different Chinese, African, Chinese, Latin American business deals, trade deals, the reconstruction processes that the Chinese have initiated in different countries around the world, I truly believe that the Americans are not in a position to strike a decisive blow against the Russians and the Chinese. That time has passed, and that's why I'm calling for the United States to go back into the isolationist mode, to reprocess what they have done in the past few decades, and to rethink about their approach around the world and come back, right? We want for the United States to be present, but we want it to be present as a sane country and not as a bulldog striking every country that doesn't like the American approach. Guys, when I was interviewing Pepe Escobar the other day, I posted his new book called Eurasia versus NATOistan in the description below. I'm just going to play this very short video that I made with him, and this is something that I'm probably going to play it every time that I'm doing a live streaming alone, and that is that I have posted his book in the description below. This is not a paid advertisement, nothing. Those are affiliate links. And if you buy the book of Pepe Escobar, you are supporting this channel with a very small commission. Let's take a look. Yeah. Guys, it goes without saying that the new book of Pepe Escobar, you can order it now online. I put the links in the description below. Eurasia versus NATOistan. You can purchase it from the United States, and you can purchase it from also from Germany. And we say in Arabic, you can hit 3 birds with 1 stone if you buy this book. Or how? One, first, you buy the book of Pepe. Secondly, you delve into history and geopolitics, and you understand the past and the present, and you can also foresee the future. And the third, you can also, by purchasing these books, you support this channel, because those are affiliate links. You're not going to pay anything extra, but I get a commission from Amazon when you buy them. So everybody is a win-win. It's a win-win situation for everyone. This is an independent YouTube channel. Uncle Putin is not paying me. Uncle Xi Jinping is not paying me. Uncle Assad is not paying me. Nobody is writing checks to me. So this is self-funded work, guys. I would really appreciate it. That, and also
I'm glad to hear that, Kevork. So please, everybody, guys, buy it through Kevork's channel.
Yeah.
And in terms of payment, it's very crazy. Look, my publisher is American.
Yeah.
So you know, it's not that I'm being paid by Putin for my book. Yeah. It's an American publisher.
So, guys, tomorrow on Tuesday, I'm going to host Jason Ross. Jason Ross, he's from the Schiller Institute. He's a science advisor of the Schiller Institute and also part of the LaRouche movement. And he's going to come to Syriana Analysis to explain the LaRouche's Oasis plan, which is a key to future Israeli-Palestine peace. According to him, he's going to explain what is the Oasis plan and why it is relevant today. And I'm going to challenge him on if this is still applicable after the Gaza onslaught, and which I don't think it is applicable at the moment. So I'm going to prepare some good questions for him, and we're going to do this tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. He's going to join from the United States to speak about this, and also he will explain the difference between the Chinese and the American models of global governance. So stay tuned, guys. Please like this video before leaving this live streaming. I would really appreciate that. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe and hit the like button and all this stuff. And if you want to support my independent work like I'm doing this one, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.